Dorian once told me the ego gets in the way, and sometimes it needs to be destroyed. Where drugs once expanded his muscles, now they expanded his mind. Typical of Dorian, he went to the extreme with the most powerful psychedelic, DMT.
What do you take away from those DMT experiences?
It's tremendous amount of information that you get in, and it was like the higher me talking to me and telling me like the biggest problem we have here really on this planet, on this plane, is the ego, you know? The ego gets in the way of everything, and the ego is not really you, you know? The ego is just a construct we've formed in this, yeah.
Was ego what built your whole career?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, initially, why, you know, why would you want to be the best in the world at something, you know? I guess it must be your ego.
Shadow, you know? I call it a door opener for me to, like, wow, you realize it's, you know, there's another world out there, and where we live is just like, it's just a narrow piece of light. Taking psychedelics, it takes you out of that, and you see that there's more out there. I don't know if I would take psychedelics again. Maybe I would take ayahuasca again if I felt there was a reason, if I had something I really wanted to know or work on or something like that. But it comes to a point where once you picked up the receiver and you took the call, put it back down, and you don't need to take that call again.
The best thing that ever happened to me that I retired from boxing, because of me working out and me getting, I was so intense with this. My whole objective was hurting people and wanting to be the best, and my ego took over, and I'm like Tyson, I'm the best to ever live, and all this bullshit. And dealing with my partner Rob Hickman, I happened to embark on this, come across this thing called the Toad. Are you familiar with the Toad?
Yeah, what you're talking about is 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine.
Oh, that's it right there, yeah.
Yeah.
And I came across that, and I smoked this, I don't know, this medicine, drug, whatever you want to call it and stuff. And I've never been the same. I look at life different. I look at people differently. And the experience I can't even express, really. It's almost like dying and being reborn.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience. That's what it felt like to me, too. Like you stop existing. The 5-methoxys, there's two...
Tell me, what's the deal with that? What the hell's going on here?
5-methoxy is produced by your brain, but what it is it's DMT with an oxygen molecule attached to it. So regular DMT is N,N-dimethyltryptamine, and then 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine is DMT with like there's a very subtle change to the molecule, and that subtle change, for some reason, takes away the visuals. You've done regular DMT too, right?
Yes.
Regular DMT is rich with visuals, very strange, bright, colorful, impossible to describe visuals.
It's inconceivable.
Inconceivable is the best way to put it.
Yeah, inconceivable.
Yeah. But
I try to explain it to some people, my wives, and it's just I don't have the words to explain it.
That's exactly what I always say. I've done a terrible job explaining it to everybody. Every time I've tried, it just doesn't work. But all those things, they give you perspective.
It's almost like you're dying. You're submissive. You're humble. You know, what I mean, you're vulnerable, but you're invincible still in all. You know, it's just that weird feeling.
Well, you feel like you're part of the universe. When you're separate from your ego, you realize this whole thing, you're a part of this whole thing, and this whole thing is unstoppable. It's a gigantic, huge, all-encompassing, almost like a living thing. Life.
You know, Joan, this is what I also realized, too, after going through that experience. You realize how insignificant you are sometimes without your ego.
Yes.
You know, you realize, wow, you're not really much that you really thought you were.
Yeah, you are and you aren't. Obviously, you are in everyday life. I mean, you go places, you have a dramatic effect on people. You mean a lot. You mean a lot to those people that you run into. You mean a lot to the people that you love and that love you.
It's very interesting to me that some of the most competitive and elite athletes have been drawn to the psychedelic experience, specifically DMT, and I want to explore the possible significance and implications of that draw. When watching both Dorian Yates and Mike Tyson speak about DMT to Joe Rogan and others, ego is often a topic that comes up with them both. Both have wanting to be the best and an extreme work ethic in common, and I think that it's interesting to hear about the revelations that they have when talking about what they've learned on DMT. I like how Mike Tyson describes it as a humbling experience, but it also makes him feel invincible. It's a strange dichotomy that ends up playing out, and it's hard to juggle them both and really make sense of them. I think it's interesting that they were both exposed to it after they've achieved their ranks and goals as competitors and really established themselves, because it really is able to put their ambitious personalities into perspective and to be able to analyze it rather than being something that inspired them to achieve what they eventually would have anyways. Often psychedelics give revelations to people to strive for high achievement, especially if it's done in a ritualistic setting, and I do feel like one day competitive areas like schools and sports places would discover the potential for the ritual use of psychedelics to possibly boost their performance and give them a certain edge on it, because I think that they'll better understand the relationship between their ego and achievement and all those things. It seems like a bizarre conclusion, but it makes sense that if people are not letting egoic distractions get in the way with their goals, then they would be a lot more focused and driven to what they want and what they want to manifest, I think. And I think that it would help them develop a more humble work ethic to just be like the best versions of themselves. Dorian Yates talked about how he only competed with himself, and I think that that is a bit more of an enlightened perspective. So I think he was a bit more enlightened from the get-go or from the beginning. And I always think like it would be interesting to see what kind of influence DMT would have had on young Dorian Yates. I think it would have been a plus on his performance, just giving him more focus and more drive to achieve the thing that he already did. But I'm sure that he would have achieved even more, or even had a deeper focus in certain aspects of his life. And Mike Tyson does seem to be deeper than his reputation led on, so I do think that that part of his personality contributed to why he was such a powerful fighter. I think it's pretty clear that both of them had strong wills and strong will to succeed, and I think the main effect that DMT would have on competitive people is it makes them understand their will a little bit better, and for other people, I think it would strengthen their will because it's a trying experience. Like, as I said, Mike Tyson would describe it as both a humbling experience, but something that also makes you feel invincible. And I think it's humbling because it's an opponent that he actually fears. But it makes him feel invincible because the power that intimidates him is his own.
I think that any breakthrough psychedelic experience, whether it's psilocybin or LSD or DMT, they're
all pretty much, you know,
ego dissolving,
different road to the same place. You know.
Well, Terence McKenna used to say that DMT is the center of the mandala. The way I describe DMT is it's like mushrooms times 1,000,000 plus aliens.
Yeah.
And that it seems so titanically bizarre that there's like, I've tried to describe it to people, but I always say, look, I'm going to tell,
I'm going to do it, man.
Yeah, I'm going to give you some bullshit words.
Yeah, you can't really do it because you can't.
There's no way.
We don't have the words,
right,
to put it into words. You know, you can attempt to. I went to this place. Well, it's not a place, but
right.
I don't have the word for it.
The place is everywhere.
Yeah, it's like, and there's colors, there's numbers, there's shapes, and
people.
Things, and there's like
gestures.
Everything is all one fucking thing. And what I noticed is like my breath was connected to it. I don't know how it happened, but I was in the trip and I went like that, and the whole thing moved. I was like, really? Let me try this then. And then the whole thing moved, and then there was music playing, and the music was part of the thing as well. Like the thing. I don't even know what to call it. The thing, the place. I don't have a word, you know.